What is up, y'all? Welcome to the American Peloton. I am Jonathan Crane. I'm a mediocre Cat 2 cyclist out of Birmingham, Alabama.
And I'm Ben, former elite mountain biker, head coach at Skyway Cycling, and team director at Skyway, presented by Domestique Coffee.
I feel like I've really been living up to the mediocre Cat 2 moniker recently, with a couple of exceptions. I've had a lot of top top half of the field finishes in Cat 2 races. It's
You've
been fun
had
though. Been
no,
racing
you've
a
had a
lot.
few top tens. I don't,
Yeah,
I don't know if you're living up to that at all. I'd say you're like right on, like you're a top 10 cat too. That's fine.
I've been doing what I am the king of, which is to get one spot outside of the money. So if it pays 6 deep, I'm 7, or if it pays 10 deep, I'm 11. That's kind of
Yeah,
like my zone, which I'm gonna say that's mediocre. I won't give
that's
all that
fair.
away. I've got a bunch of race videos. I've got like 6 videos worth of race footage. 2 of them are edited and on the channel now. So if you're watching this on YouTube, go check those out. If you're listening to the podcast, go to my YouTube. But I got a bunch more that are gonna be coming out. So yeah, psyched for all that. We were at Sunny King. We were both there. We
Yeah,
both
yeah, we
raced.
were.
We both watched it. There's so much to get into there.
It was a crazy race. Do we want to talk about the 2-3 at all, or do we want to just go straight to the pro race?
I don't want to spoil it because I've got a video from the 2-3 for sure that I want people to go watch that. So I'm not gonna give away. I guess you could go look up the results, but yeah, I'll say it was my best race personally of the season. I love Sunny King, so it was really good to have a good one there, especially after breaking my hand last year. Just to get through that one clean was nice. But yeah,
Yeah, no, I would say we can just go straight to the pro race though, because why not?
yeah. So they changed the schedule for the pro races a little bit this year. They moved everything forward so that nobody was racing under the lights. Normally, it's a little bit more of like a twilight race, but this year everything was in the daytime, which I actually liked because it gave me time to do my race, go like lay in the grass somewhere for a minute, throw up, get changed, and then get carnival food while I was watching the women's pro race. Like normally the food vendors are kind of closing up as the pros are getting started, but
Yeah,
this pushed everything forward enough. And I think for the organizers, just for like longevity and logistics sake, it saved them from having to pay for lighting to get extra lighting out on the course.
yeah, that's kind of the theory we had, because some of the commentators were talking with you maybe, and they were like, how long do they keep doing this race? It's been going on for so long, and we're kind
Oh,
of
that
starting to
wasn't
see.
anybody official. That was
Oh,
just
oh,
friends.
okay.
Yeah. Were
I thought
saying,
that was Chad or
no, no,
somebody.
no.
Gotcha. Like, and it's been going on for so long. It's such a namesake legacy race that we are starting to see, like, the lights coming out, which honestly, that's a fine change. Some of the night
Yeah.
crits get a little sketchy, anyways. So
Yeah. I
it,
think a lot of the night crits are courses where there's enough street lights that they can
yeah,
almost get away with it, but they were bringing in a lot of stadium lighting for this one.
yeah, for sure.
So the women's race, I've got like a page of notes on each of these races because they were both very dynamic. But the women's race was kind of a race of two halves. It didn't really start to hot up. I guess I'll start with there was a crash early on. I know a lot of the LA sweat riders were caught up in it because I saw their mangled bikes, which sucks.
Yeah,
I hope they're all okay. Um, they are consistently like the best, most stylish team in the women's
I'll say
peloton, I'll say.
they're the stylish, have the best kits, and like the coolest bikes always, like
Yeah,
without a doubt.
yeah, yeah. So seeing they're on those new Cannondale Super Sixes this year, and seeing a couple of those things just like snapped in half, as I was walking back to spectate with my what did I have, like a big lemonade and a snow cone and a yeah, all kinds of garbage, Polish sausage dog.
Yeah, stuff I've never seen you eat ever. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I was really going in during these pro races. That's like a tradition for me. If I have a good race, I'm gonna eat something crazy at the Sunny King. There's like a street festival. If you've never been to it before, Noble Street Festival is like a community fair type thing that happens in conjunction with the race, but gets a lot of the, non-endemic bike people out there and gives me a lot of insane food vendor options.
Yeah, they were like it's also Alabama, so like you get a lot of like just crazy southern options too. Like the Northeast and everybody like they have crazy carnival food, but in the South like we have like really
Yeah, there
crazy
were
carnival food.
deep fried Oreos and funnel cakes and all that kind of
So good.
stuff.
Yeah.
So the crash aside, and I don't know if the crash was the cause of this, but after the crash, sort of that first half of the women's race was pretty chill. Like they kind of there weren't any big attacks. They were just kind of keeping a steady pace. There wasn't much action to speak of. It really hotted up right where I jumped in with the video if you're watching us on YouTube, which was the mid-race point sprint, which DNA seems very motivated to go for those points preems. I guess they're chasing the green jersey in the ACC among other things. They're going for the win also, but they seem pretty motivated. And after that, we saw Butcher Box. Basically, that was at 20 to go, from like 20 to go to 10 to go. Butcher Box, a couple other teams, but mainly Butcher Box, started really throwing haymakers.
Yeah, it just looked like I think everyone sat in. A lot of people were fresh, and they were just like, let's see what happens. Maybe we can get it because most of these teams aren't beating Miami Knights, Denver, or Legion in a bunch sprint.
Yeah, it was interesting to me that nobody really wanted to go for it in that first half of the race. I don't know if that's just a fact of like multiple teams having the same plan, or if that crash did kind of change the plan for like maybe LA Sweat was going to be trying to throw people up the road early on, and then those people crashed out, or I'm not sure who all else crashed out. Um, but yeah, the first half of the race was pretty chill, and then once Butcher Rock started throwing riders up the road, it was really single riders at a time, mostly from like 20 to go until 10 to go ish. It looked like definitely DNA wants a field sprint. Legion wants a field sprint. So Legion had a half squad. So like DNA had six, Miami had six, Miami Knights had six, Butcher Box had six. Legion only had three. Legion had Kendall, Alexis, and then the woman who ended up winning, um, which was someone that I was not familiar with from
Yeah,
Mexico.
yeah. I'm drawing a
We'll
blank
get
on the name,
there.
which is bad.
No,
Okay,
I've got the name in front of me, but I don't want to
okay, okay.
interrupt the video to get there. And I've got a
Gotcha.
video of the end that we will get to as well. But yeah, it seemed like they maybe didn't. There were enough big teams that wanted a field sprint that it didn't put enough pressure on that Legion team. The smaller teams and like individual riders. So the other thing is there were a bunch of like there was one rider from Velocious Sport in there. There were two from the Perninapen, the jersey with the ASOS sleeve. There were two of those
Yeah,
riders. Perninapen,
Perpinian.
yeah,
Is that it?
Perpinian,
Yeah.
something like that.
Okay.
Project. There were a few of those one-off riders, and it seemed like they all really started trying to go for it around 10 to go to 5 to go.
Yep.
But um, Miami Knights, it seemed to me, and I watched it at the time and then watched it back to kind of confirm this. It seemed like they had their squad kind of split in two, and they had two riders, Cook White and one other, that were kind of like in charge of welding the field back together. So they weren't doing so much chasing, but they were like catching and killing moves. They were trying to
Yep.
be like toward the front, and like every time someone jumped, they would jump with them and not pull through. And then DNA was like completely committed to the lead out train move.
Yeah. That explains it because so one of the girls on the Velocia sport team, like maybe it was like with 8 to go, she like
Mhm.
went to the front and I was thinking like, why is she pulling? That's so dumb.
Yeah.
But it makes
That,
sense with Miami Knights doing the like catch and kill thing that she would
yeah.
get caught up on the front like that.
It was
Um,
an attack. Yeah, it was an attack, not a
yeah,
pull that she took. I
right.
think
It
you are
looked like a
right.
pull. Yeah, it looked like a pull like watching it live. And then in the
Uh-huh.
replay, you're like, okay, she was trying to attack, and Miami Knights were like just
Just sticking
neutralizing it,
those.
and then sticking her on the front for a couple laps.
Yeah, exactly. And there were a lot of those. It seemed like all of the kind of like individual riders, their like alarm bells started going off in that last quarter
Yep.
of the race where they said like, I'm not going to outsprint Legion. I'm not going to outsprint DNA. Nothing has gotten away already, so I got to shoot my shot now. So there was kind of this chaos zone from like 10 to go to 5 to go
Yep.
until DNA took over. DNA kind of took the front and started regulating things around 3 to go. And this is where I got to give Legion a lot of credit. Legion did a great job in this race of using up the other teams
Yep.
before they did work themselves. It's not that they weren't chasing it all throughout, but they were like waiting until if anyone was chasing, they weren't going to chase. But as soon as the chase dissipated, they would not let it get slow. They would ramp it back up. And that's exactly what they did at the finish. Like they kind of let DNA do the full lead out train thing, and they actually did almost exactly what we did in the 2-3 race right before them. So maybe they watched maybe they watched our success. They just had one
maybe
more rider at the end.
maybe we had the secret sauce, and everyone was like, "Oh shit, that's what we got to
Yeah,
do."
I mean, I think that it is true that the secret sauce of Sunny King is don't get boxed in or swarmed on that last lap. Like you have to have someone who's willing to absolutely slay themselves on the last lap, or you're gonna get swarmed. For
Yep.
those of you that don't know, it's like kind of a rectangle four corner crit. The whole thing is on a tilt, so the start finish straight is uphill about 2% average. The back straight is downhill about 2% average, and the short sides are flat. So on that downhill side on the last lap, if somebody is not on the front just like wide open full throttle, you're going to get swarmed from both sides. It's a big wide road. People have a lot of draft in that downhill. And
Yeah.
yeah, we're watching it right now. Final lap, they kind of waited until DNA was done, and then Kendall just goes to the front. Kendall and Alexis Ryan go to the front and just absolutely lay it down. She, they did a little
Yeah.
bit better job of me than out of corner four. They didn't come out of corner four and then just pull the plug. They came out of corner four and then ramped it up and pulled off. But
Yeah. Because I think like coming out of corner four to the finish line, it's still even at max effort 25 to 35 seconds.
yeah, it's
So that's a
probably
crazy long sprint to go from the end of the corner.
it's so deceptive because it isn't super long distance wise. Like
Yeah.
especially you're looking at the truss and you can see it. It looks short, but it's also uphill a little bit. So like the distance isn't
Yeah.
that far, but the fact that it's uphill time wise, it takes you a little bit longer to get there.
Right.
Um, so yeah, nobody had the answer for Legion in that women's race, as is often the case, or has
Yeah.
been over the last few years.
Yeah. That's just
Now,
how it is now. I think for the
Elizabeth
Legion
Stout.
women's.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. They're the big dogs. And that brings me back to the like nobody wanting to attack in that first half thing. I do think ButcherBox like had some firepower. I think some of those individual riders, if like ButcherBox had started throwing haymakers from the beginning, maybe LA Sweat, and then maybe some of those individual riders had started getting in those moves and putting the pressure on Legion to actually do the chasing. Because, like I said, Legion was doing very minimal chasing. It ended up being a
Yep.
lot of those individual riders that were like worried about missing moves were the ones kind of covering moves. Like once ButcherBox started going, because they were thinking someone from ButcherBox would get a big gap. The individual rider goes, I don't have anybody up there. I don't have any teammates to pull it back. So I'm going to try to jump across to it. And
Yeah.
that would kind of weld it halfway back. And then DNA would bring it the rest of the way.
Yeah, my kind of thing is if I'm DNA, like I'm looking at it, like they wanted a bunch sprint, but Butcher Box is sending riders, and so now you're spending a lot of energy covering moves. if I'm DNA, I'm looking at ButcherBox and I'm forming like a brief alliance to get that 2 person break and make Legion and Miami Knights do a lot of work, or get Miami Knights in that move too, and then it's all up to Legion to do all the work.
Yeah.
That's like if I'm a pro women's team and I'm looking to beat Legion, I think that's going to be your one of your main options to do so.
Yeah, for sure. So Elizabeth Salazar from Legion was the rider, a new rider for this year, or if she has been on the team. Uh,
I think
I have
no.
not. Maybe she's just been outshined or overshadowed by uh, the sisters Kendall and Alexis Ryan. A really mixed bag for Miami Knights in this race because they didn't get anybody on the podium. They had fourth and fifth with Paula Munoz and Andrea Sear, but Andrea Sear took the leader's jersey for the ACC overall. And I did go back and double check the schedule they put out, and it does look like Miami is going to do the entire ACC series.
That makes sense. Okay.
I don't know if I misread it or I've also found different calendars on like from Velo News to like on different outlets on the internet. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure if maybe there are some calendars that are actually combining the Denver and Miami NCL teams into one schedule, and that's what I was looking at incorrectly or what. But yeah,
That's
so
possible. Or maybe they changed their schedule once the Atlanta race got rescheduled and that May
could
time
be
period came up and now they're dropping a couple races in August. Like
yeah.
maybe that's the case as well.
Yeah, that definitely could be it. But it looks like they are going to do the entire ACC series, and they have just put Andrea in the lead and Legion. So Alexis Ryan was in the lead going into this. We'll get to ACC standings before at the end of this. We'll get there. We'll get there. I'm going to go to men's race now. But yeah, good, exciting women's race. Fun to watch it in person for sure. And men's race was a little different. The men's race, it was kind of on from the gun in this one.
Oh yeah, they were throwing haymakers like lap two. Like it was. I was talking to Gabe Mendes from Miami Knights just before the race, and he was kind of saying the dynamic is like Miami Knights has the best sprinter, Alfredo Rodriguez, and so none of the other teams want it to be a bunch sprint. And
Right.
so, but Miami wants it to be a bunch sprint. But even if it's a break, they're just going to send Frank. So they're
Yeah.
Miami's kind of like whatever happens, happens. We're going to win or try to
Yeah.
win. And all the other teams are like all in on trying to make a break stick.
I think everybody else also sees, if Legion is there or if Legion has been there. So let's talk about who was here before we
Yeah,
get that deep into it. Who was here and who wasn't here. So Legion only had Gavin Hoover and Ty Magner. So that's a little two-man hit squad.
yeah,
Um, their Blazers team was there full force. I believe Aviators only had Connor White, who from Bermuda, I believe, definitely like a big. He was a big Zwift guy in 2020. Um, he stole some KOMs on me. The day after he rode back from Anniston, Alabama to the airport along. There's a rail trail that goes from Anniston to Atlanta. It's like 120 miles or something like that, 140 miles. And I had a multi-hour KOM going toward Atlanta on that rail trail since like 2016, and I got the email of like someone took your KOM, and I was like, man, somebody took that one, and it was Connor White on his race
Do
bike.
you
So
do you have Memorial Day plans? Let's
I
go.
I
Let's
don't
go get
maybe
it
yeah
back.
maybe let's go do it. Yeah, I did that on a cross bike last time, so we could
we could
probably if we knew where the start and finish was, just team time trial it.
we could get it.
But yeah, I think he was the only Aviators rider there. He was pretty active early on. I also had it in my notes. Gabe was super active for
Yes.
Knights. I think Gabe was in the same role. It seemed like they maybe Knights had a similar plan from the men's race and the women's race. And I think Gabe was in that Cook White role along with Johnny Clark, where they were kind of like catching and killing breakaways, like getting in
Yep.
them and then dedicating less energy than the other riders in the breakaway. They weren't necessarily just sitting on and doing no work, but they were getting into the breakaways and then not being the one to just absolutely drive it throughout the
Yeah.
race.
That's what you would see. They were in every breakaway. I don't think they left a single one uncovered, and you never saw them on the front of that breakaway. Um,
So the teams that were there, I didn't get all
yeah,
the way through this.
no,
Texas Roadhouse, full squad. Project Echelon, full squad. And those two were kind of the animators in the first
yep,
half of the race. Like they were both sending people up the road very, very early and very, very often. Blazers, full squad there. So I've got like a tinfoil hat theory here, and I
all
don't
right.
know. This may, yeah,
Let's
this
hear
may
it.
cause controversy, but I'm gonna say it. So it seemed like Blazers was there, and they weren't really sending people up the road very often. It seemed to me like they were almost working for Legion. I don't know. They were the ones chasing a lot of moves back. They were getting on the front of the peloton and really hammering, especially in moves that Legion wasn't in. That
Yep.
could also just be coincidence. As I say that, I'm looking at, I think it's Fury trying to get across to a move that has Legion in it. So they did also get relegated. They had a full squad. Blazers did of 6 riders, and then Hassani Hinnis, who is on Blazers, raced in his Anguilla national kit and was relegated after the race because he is technically on that team. So they had 7 riders. I don't know. Seems like some
Oh,
tomfoolery there a little bit. It could be an honest
okay.
mistake, but he even changed his helmet from the NCL team helmet. So I don't know. The officials noticed it and relegated him after, but
Yeah,
an interesting wrinkle.
that was strange. That was strange. And the two others, so Miami Blazers and Austin Aviators, I couldn't figure out what they were doing the whole time because
Same.
they were doing a lot of work, but they weren't countering anything. They weren't doing a whole lot, and then all of a sudden they do a ton of work and then gas themselves and miss a move. And it just
Yeah,
I couldn't figure it out.
that theory was me. We were talking about it as the race was happening, but as we're out
Yep.
there, we're kind of only seeing the start finish straight. So it's possible that things are happening on the backside that we're missing. As I rewatched it, that's me trying to make sense of all the work they were doing because they would do a lot of work to drag stuff back and then not put anyone up the road after that. But I
Yep.
also saw we just went past a clip of one of their riders kind of looking back at the peloton and waving his arm like, "Come on, guys!" And I think that was at his teammates. And there's a Blazers rider trying to go across to the move we're looking at right now. But then that's a
Yeah.
question of like, are you trying to get in the move or are you trying to weld the move back together?
Yeah.
So
Maybe there's just not enough team cohesion with
yeah,
those two squads yet. That could be it, where they're all kind of like they picked up a lot of individual 1-2 guys, and I think they might be have some growing pains with getting a team
yeah, I
dynamic
think
going. I
so.
don't. It's weird.
Blazers picked up Monk,
Yep.
Brendan Fury from Project Echelon. So he's new to the squad, but maybe like the star rider. And then they kind of lost their star riders. Clever Martinez, we're looking at right now, went to NCL Miami. So there's a big shakeup. They probably have a little bit of work. I think this is one of the first races they've done as a full squad, so we may see
Yep.
some better tactics for them. The team we haven't mentioned is ACG, American Cycling Group, was here. They've got why am I blanking on his name? I'm looking at him. Danny Summerhill right now.
Okay.
They've got Danny Summerhill in the green jersey in this competition. So he was lighting it up for the mid race point sprints, and he was up there throughout. I think he might
Yep.
have even kind of been their protected sprinter.
That's what it seemed like, and it makes sense. They're trying to keep that green jersey on him. He was involved in every point sprint, and they did a really good job of getting him in position to contest every single point sprint.
Yeah.
Um, so they did a really, really good job working for Danny and making sure he was involved in everything that mattered.
And Legion did a good job in this race, just like the women's team did, of having a smaller squad, kind of using everybody else up. They did a lot of tacking on to things that were going away. waiting until a move got dragged just close enough and then jumping across to it. They kind of knew that everybody else was racing against each other. But I think when everyone else
Yeah.
sees that Legion doesn't have a full squad there, this is something I was trying to get to a minute ago. When everyone else sees that Legion doesn't have a full squad there, if you want a breakaway, you go, tonight is my night. Because if Legion has a full squad, they're going to do, or they're going to try to do what they've been doing for the past several couple of years, I guess, at this point, which
Yeah.
is, put six guys on the front, rotate Sam Boardman, two others, and they're just going to drag you back. There's no getting away from that. So a lot of people saw their opportunity, including, I think, Texas Roadhouse and Project Echelon, to maybe throw somebody up the road. And they really went for it throughout the whole
Yeah.
race.
Okay, there was constantly in the whole race just ones and twos, threes and fours. Like every time something got brought back, another person went. Like these teams were like really, really gunning for a break. And I wonder if that's maybe why a break really didn't stick, was because everyone was so antsy to get a break going.
Yeah, it did seem like all of these breaks that looked promising were like too big to work
Yeah.
together. So you would get a break that
Right.
it would be like, yeah, Miami's in that, ACG is in that, Echelon is in that, but it would be too many guys, and at some point one of them would look around, someone wouldn't pull through, and then it would come back.
Yep.
It was good aggressive racing though, super fun to watch.
Yeah,
One
for
thing I
sure.
noticed strategy wise, what it seemed like, and this is like 1 week after Speed Week. I think most of these teams who had done Speed Week just kind of stayed in the South, so they had like a week off between Speed Week and Sunny King. But I noticed a lot of teams doing whatever had worked best for them at Sunny King,
Right.
doing at Sunny King what had worked best for them during Speed Week. So Brendan Rim won Peachtree Corners during Speed Week with a move at like 12 to go. Saw
That's
him,
about right. Yeah.
yeah, in the end, in the last 10, 15 laps, saw him go solo around that same point in this race. Fergus Arthur from Texas Roadhouse won Lagrange with an early solo move. Saw him send it up the road solo twice in the first probably 15 laps, at
Yeah.
least twice in the first 15 laps. And then Miami Knights, having some success with the lead out train, really doing the lead out train thing. Same with ACG, honestly, having success jumping
Yeah.
lead out trains.
Yeah. Sure. That, yeah, it was just fun. Everyone was doing kind of what they're good at. And it was just really fun to see everyone sort of just be in their element. Um, I do think I noticed one really underrated rider on Project Echelon. He gets like zero attention, but he was in like half the breaks. He was pulling things back. He was probably one of the stronger guys in the race. And that's Will Harden for
Yeah,
Project Echelon. He was,
for
if you're
sure.
watching the coverage, he's in the orange lens glasses, and he was covering just about everything, being an absolute workhorse. Um,
Yeah. He's been training with our boy William, correct? I think he's in the Tennessee area.
he
I want to say I've seen him.
Winston Salem, Boone, North
Okay,
Carolina kind of area. He went to Lees McRae College, so
that's what it is.
yeah,
Yeah, he was on that collegiate scene. I think that's where I'm aware of him from.
yeah,
Yeah, he was doing a lot of, honestly, everybody on Echelon was really, really, really doing a lot of good work.
yeah,
So I want to get into the finale here. We're going to get to the finish, which was insane in its own right. I'm sure people have seen Criterium Nation Instagram shared the picture of my face that someone scraped from the live stream where like I look like the Home Alone, like when I'm watching the finish, like when he puts the aftershave on his face. That was what I looked like watching that
right,
finish. But it wasn't even just that finish that was crazy. So we're looking at it right now. Miami Knights takes the front with about 5 to go, which seemed a little early to me. When you only
yeah,
have 6 riders, everybody's got to do a full lap, and then you got one guy to do a lead out. They only had 3 get to the front to actually take it. And the announcer, I remember as they were coming around one of these laps, was like, Miami's got to pick it up. They're not going fast enough to keep everybody at bay. There
no,
also wasn't much wind. Like the wind really died down during this race. And I think that allowed people on the downhill to kind of slingshot around a little bit more than in some years, like especially years when it's been a tailwind on that downhill. I believe it was like 2017. Somebody, I think it might have been Danny Summerhill, really overshot that corner because everybody was going so fast. Corner three, downhill,
Yeah.
tailwind, just absolutely slid out on it. But yeah, I think the lack of wind meant there was a little bit more draft through the whole course and a little bit more opportunity to get in the slipstream and jump around.
Yeah. See, because there wasn't a whole lot of time in the whole race where it was like strung out, single file. Like there were moments on the uphill, but it
Yeah,
like every time on that downhill, it seemed like it would kind of bunch back up, get 3, 4 wide again. And I mean that downhill is where you can really make up some wheels anyway. So there just wasn't like you had to be going really, really hard to string out the race. It
yeah,
was like the wind was not in your favor if you were on the front.
right. So Miami does the full lead out train. They get everybody up there, which was impressive. And this is Miami. All three Miami teams are here. So I guess I got to be more specific. Not ACG, not Miami Blazers. Miami Blazers had kind of wasted themselves by this point, it seemed, and they were having trouble
Yeah.
getting anybody up there. I think Fury got himself into the mix, but everybody else was a little bit absent from the finale. But NCL Miami, Miami Knights, took the front and did like a real Legion style lead out train. And this was one of the first times at a race of this level that they've been able to really take the front like this. And not that they're not drilled on it, but I think it showed that they haven't done it a ton because it did not look as clean as when Legion does it. You know, they weren't able to just
Yeah.
absolutely put everybody in the hurt locker. And I believe it was three to go. ACG did what ACG has been doing, the move that, I mean, debatably caused that crash a couple weeks ago, but they jump up and jump across the train. This time successfully, no incidents, no dive bomb. This is a course where it's a little bit easier to do that because it's a wider course. The straights are a little bit longer. But yeah, they were able to get fully around the train of NCL. But I think they maybe did it a lap earlier than they should have because they
Yeah.
took it with on the three to go lap
Yeah.
and they were not able to hold it. They only got three riders up there.
Yeah, when we were on the sideline there, we were just looking like that's a little early for them. Like they you could see in their faces and the way they were like riding that they knew it was too early too.
Right.
Like they were kind of like, ah,
Here it
shit.
is.
Like what do we do?
Yeah, we're watching it right now. Hernandez comes up the outside on the downhill and just completely jumps the Miami train. And it seems like they
Yeah.
were not expecting that. And when that happens, Legion infiltrates the Miami train too. So then you got Gavin Hoover in there, one Miami rider, and a couple of wheels back, Ty Magner's in there. So
Yeah.
it just got extremely messy as they're coming into two to go. Hernandez did a hero pull trying to hold the front as long as he could, but it all fell apart for them. So there was like, we're seeing full control from Miami. They lose control. ACG takes control. Too early for them. Summerhill doesn't want to get stuck on the front. Shuffles again. And we came into that last lap. It was kind of anybody's ball game again. So coming into the last lap, Gavin Hoover is kind of doing a lead out for nobody. He's just got to hope that Ty is back there somewhere. Hoover hits the front for Legion. Legion only has one other guy, which is Ty Magner. They come out of corner four. It is Hoover, Summerhill, Alfredo, and then Cade Bickmore and Ty Magner on the wheel. I didn't even notice Project Echelon in this finish. I've watched this probably 10 times and I have no idea how they moved up past all those trains that were going backwards. And there was the moment that it happened.
Right.
Alfredo posted up too early and Cade Bickmore just pipped him. Honestly,
Yeah.
Ty was about to do the same. Like it was so close in that finish.
Yeah, it was like a true photo finish. We actually didn't know. We thought it was Cade, but we weren't sure. But everyone was like doing he did the Alaphilippe thing. He celebrated too early. He's cocky. There, unless you were there, you didn't know this. The
Yep.
finished truss was like what was like 3-4 feet, but
Before
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 the
yeah, the
finish
truss
line.
was before the line.
Right. So if you're like fully race brain, all out sprinting, like you're looking for the truss, like you're not looking at the line, you're just looking for the big old finish. Like, hey, we're here.
Yep.
Like it's entirely possible he sprinted for the truss, not the line. When he hit the truss, he's like, oh great, and then was like, oh no,
Right.
like
They
like that. That's what it looks like
they did say it before. Did they say it before your race? They said before our race, you're sprinting
before.
for the
Yeah,
line, not the truss.
yeah. They said it before every race, but I mean, when you're an hour in and you're all
Yeah.
out sprinting, all of that just kind of goes out the window, you know.
Well, I don't know if I heard it before the pro race, but I was over there. I saw him do call ups and everything. But yeah, I don't know. He did post up too early. I feel like
Mhm.
honestly, when it's that close in my mind, like just go through the line and then post up. Like
I
someone's gonna
agree.
get the
Yeah,
picture head on, and it's gonna look like you're right under the line. Yeah, just absolutely brutal. He had won this race last year, so maybe he's like, I know how this feels. I think I got it.
yeah,
But Bickmore is on a hot streak right now. He's
yeah.
coming off a win at Gila, win at the Redlands Crit. Um, yeah, he's really on one. I'm interested to see if he's gonna be doing Joe Martin next week. I know Echelon is. We don't know the full start list there.
We do kind of. If you go to Bike Reg,
Oh, okay. Well,
let me
I'll
see.
let you do that while I vamp, but we're gonna get to Joe Martin a little bit later. Yeah, this finish was definitely it's the thumbnail of this show on YouTube, but yeah, insane finish. Woof. So it's literally a tire width, and Ty was right there as well. So yeah, that was the podium, and the men is Harden, Rodriguez, and then Ty Magner in third for Legion. Pretty solid for the two-man hit squad there.
He's not doing Joe Martin.
That makes sense. I mean, he's
Yeah,
been doing so much racing. That would have just been an insane amount of racing to keep it
yeah,
going like that.
for sure. Um, but I will say they brought some hitters. Project Echelon has brought a really good squad.
Yeah, we'll get there, but yeah. So also notably, Clever Martinez in fourth. He seems to kind of be he's been consistently top five, top 10, but yeah, I think he's a threat depending on the course. Summerhill consistent with fifth there for ACG, best placed ACG
Hmm.
rider. Will Harden ended up in eighth, who you mentioned a minute ago.
Yeah,
Travieso in 10th. We didn't see anything from him all night, but he snuck in there. Arthur Fergus, best place for Texas Roadhouse in 12th. No huge shockers here. Fury's
no,
looking better than I thought in 6th.
yeah. I didn't think he was up there. I didn't think he was in the mix at all there. But
I
he's the monk for a reason, right?
Right. Yeah, we were focused on other things in that finish because it got
Right.
so insane. So now I want to talk ACC standings overall. That put Summerhill into the lead in the men's, both in the sprint competition and in the overall. So they've uncoupled. They've made some changes to the point structure here that I like. I think they're good.
Okay.
They have decoupled the sprint points and the overall points. So I think, if I'm understanding it correctly, only the mid race point sprints count for the sprint jersey, not the end points. Whereas last year,
Okay.
your end points went into the same bucket.
I like that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's more like the tour where if somebody gets way ahead in one conversation, it will or in one competition, someone else can fight for the other one. It's not you're not pulling ahead in both competitions simultaneously in a way that just makes all of the
Right.
racing you got something to follow storyline wise. But
Right.
yeah, Summerhill's in first. My assumption is that ACG is going to try and do the entire ACC series.
Yeah, that's a safe assumption.
But Alfredo's in second with 129. Miami Knights, as we said, the Knights is in second and third with Alfredo and Gomez, who is coming off a win at Athens. That's what got him all those points. But he's tied with Cade Bickmore right there, and
Yeah.
Arthur Fergus in fifth. So if he can scrape another big one like he did at Lagrange, he's still up there.
Yeah, for sure.
On the women's side, though, as I mentioned earlier, so Legion was in the lead. It was Kendall Ryan was in the lead. No, Alexis Ryan was in the lead, and Kendall Ryan was like second. Alexis did that last lap lead out, which put her way outside the points for this race, which was interesting that you would have your rider in the lead out your rider that's not in the lead, and have someone who didn't do Athens win the sprint. But I also think that Legion just is signaling that they don't care as much about the overall, which has been consistent. Like even when
Yeah.
they were in the lead of the overall, going back to USA Crits, they would just kind of say, "Yeah, whatever. We're not going to do the whole thing."
Yeah. Well, then they wouldn't even wear the leader's jersey. Like,
Right.
so yeah, it's typical of them to just be like, we don't care. Like, we win a whole bunch, so it's just a flash in the pan to win one, and we'll move on. Like,
Yeah.
it just, yeah,
They're trying to win big individual races. They're
yeah,
not as concerned about the series.
right,
Whereas I think like for DNA, they're really chasing the series. Miami Knights, like the newer teams. So your Miami Knights, your ACGs, they're really going to be chasing the series. I
yeah,
think that
yeah,
it does beg the question to me: what is Legion's focus? And maybe we're going to find out soon. But I'm not sure. I'm hopping over here to CBR, which so like ACC races have not been Legion's focus. The local California stuff has not been a focus. They're showing up to these things, but with smaller squads and not completely dominating in the way they have in years past. And then they are not doing NCL, so NCL is not their focus.
no,
They have not been dominating stage races thus far. We got another one coming up this weekend, but yeah, so we're looking at CBR, which just happened 2 weeks ago. And I thought this was a good finish. We had Eddie Huntsman, who we've talked about a lot on the show, in a four-man move, and he just lit it up on the last lap, went solo. And there was basically a four-man move with Huntsman, Paez from Legion, one Mike's Bikes rider, and one other guy. And Huntsman jumped from that on the last lap, almost laps the field in the final. The field really sat up though because there was a chase group with a bunch of guys from Team Six had missed this break and they were going real hard to get there. Didn't quite get there, but Team Six, the team that a guy we had never heard of, went toe to toe with Legion in the sprint. Um,
yeah,
yeah, Justin and Corey Corey, I think it was just Corey, just kind of pulled out of
like,
this race before it finished.
yeah. It was weird. Like, shout outs to Eddie Huntsman. Like, we didn't think Butcher Box was going to be super good this year, and they have proven us wrong over and
Yeah,
over. And the CBR races have been really good racing, big fields, fun, dynamic, like different kinds of finishes, like every single time, which has been fun to watch. But the Corey pulling out thing was weird to me. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. It's a little. Oh, that also reminds me, we did not see. So ButcherBox had a women's team at Sunny King. ButcherBox men were not at Sunny King, which is
Yeah.
why part of why I guess Huntsman was at CBR because they had guys at Speed Week and then they didn't stay for Sunny King, so that was
But
a
they
factor.
but they had a couple folks at collegiate nationals the same week. So maybe they
Yeah,
were just like, hey, half the team's gonna be in Albuquerque. We're just gonna, just do whatever you want this weekend.
yeah. So that brings me to like one of my big takeaways. I'll say great racing in the pro fields at Sunny King. Really fun to watch. Really dynamic. A good showdown between a lot of teams that we hadn't seen face off with each other yet. We still haven't seen. I thought this was going to be the time that we get all the Legion teams. We still haven't had everybody. We haven't had everybody in one place yet.
Nope.
But it was good in the pro field. In the amateur fields, these were the smallest amateur fields I think I've seen at Sunny King, and this was I've been there or following it for 10 years now, I think. And these were
Yeah.
some pretty small fields.
They were, I think, maybe 20 to 25.
Yeah, which is
Like,
normally
it's a
50 is like a
third. I'll say,
minimum.
so that's like a third of what it was last year. And then,
Yeah.
like, because I remember in my race last year, there were 60 starters.
Yeah.
Like, if you won my race last year, that was enough upgrade points to get you to your next category. Like, and
Yeah.
I think the same thing in the 2-3 race last year, too. Like,
Hmm.
there was 50, 60 guys. And maybe we're starting to see a little bit of not crit fatigue, but like just there's people who've spent enough money, they've raced a lot, they need
Yeah.
a weekend off.
So I think it's a few things. I think it's Speed Week hangover, which like I really like for my own personal racing that this was after Speed Week. Speed Week
Okay.
allowed me to get some races under my belt, take a week off, and then come into this, which is always a goal race, with I've gotten my head back around racing. When this race used to be even earlier, it was kind of tough to be like, my goal race is also like the second thing. Like, it's coming right out of
Right.
winter and there aren't many crits before it. So I don't really have like my handling, and it was a weird spot on the calendar for me. I get for pro teams that are sending people traveling, like maybe it's hard to get that extra week of hotel and people to get a lot of these quote unquote pro teams, elite teams are they're people with other jobs and stuff,
Right. Right.
mostly. So for them to take another week to just stay in the southeast, I get is tough. We got a question in the chat. Is it normally after Speed Week? No. In the past, Sunny King has been before Speed Week, often even by several weeks. They're a little bit farther apart. I think
Yep.
the other factor, so there's the Speed Week hangover part of it, and I think the other factor you just mentioned is collegiate nationals were the same weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of the guys, especially for the 2-3 guys, like a lot of those 2-3 guys are what we call collegiate A. And if you're unfamiliar with collegiate racing, it's A, B, and C. A's get to go to nationals.
I mean, even some people that would have raced pro, like
Yeah.
I think Ama Insec was
Ama,
at
um,
Pro Nats.
Will Seitz, one of the couple of the guys from Butcher Box, like
Yeah,
lots of guys. I think people we can talk about this in the offseason, but collegiate racing is like pro level racing, but we'll
yeah,
talk about that later.
sure.
But
Yeah, I think on the
yeah, it was
women's side,
weird.
like Sammy Runnels, like I don't know if she's doing a pro crit season this year, but she's raced pro cyclocross, and I know
Yeah.
she races for SCAD. So there are
Hmm.
definitely people like that on both sides that probably weren't there because of that. I think the other factor and the more overall overarching factor is we might just have too many races this year. I think we've just
Yeah.
got so many races that are all trying to be too many races might be the wrong way to say it. I think more races is a good thing, especially we're losing a bunch of road races. I think we need more local racing, amateur racing, things that are not trying to be as big pro level, high payout, high production value events, and more grassroots local building up those amateur fields. Which, like, if we're being real in American racing, the amateur race entries are what is like fueling the engine of the sport.
Yeah.
So I think every race wants to be on these big pro calendars, and we have too many competing pro calendars, and it's too much stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot of that. And I think people are forgetting that, again, the guy who rides his bike 4 days a week and races on the weekend 10 times a year is the guy who, you have 70 of those in Alabama who can fill out your, masters or 2-3 or 3-4, right?
Hmm.
And there's only 150 professional bike racers or like pro level bike racers, give or take. And so there's, if you're trying to fill out a full roster of pro guys, well, sorry, there's already 30 races doing that this year. And, but there's hundreds and thousands of amateur racers who can fill out fields. Like your A race, your big race doesn't have to be a pro one. It can be a pro 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
and just it can be that. And I think people are kind of losing the plot a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's part of it is that everyone saw a good idea at the same time. So like
Yep.
NCL launching uh, the new Williams Brothers series, Crit potentially launching. There's just a lot of races trying to be on that same pro level, and they're fighting for the same limited number of teams with that budget and stuff. And the fact that they are such big high production events drives the cost up a little bit for everyone, including
Yep.
amateurs. So then, as an
Yep.
amateur, you're really having to there are maybe more weekends than you can get off, but also you're having to say like, all right, if my entries are $60 now rather than $30 they were 2 years ago, maybe I'm doing half as many races, which
Yep.
is also seems stupid to say in a sport where people are like crashing multiple $1 million bikes, but it's
That's
I did
that's
notice.
real.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah. No, I
yeah.
noticed in, and it's true that people are on some insanely expensive bikes and stuff, but at the same time, I noticed like 30% of the field, maybe more, at Twilight was on rim brakes. Like, I think a
Yep.
lot of the guys that are actually out there racing are jobbers and are actually trying to like moneyball their bike setup, moneyball their, you know, I'm going to the race that's cheapest for me to get to, entry fee, like combining all that stuff. I think a lot of the
Yep.
guys that are buying the super duper expensive everything are not necessarily the same that are racing, or there
It's
aren't enough
that.
of them.
Well, there's that, but a lot of the guys who are buying the super expensive stuff are your like 40 plus dads who are racing the 4.5 in their career fours. When you get into like our level of racing, the 2, 3 races, you're seeing a lot of those like aluminum rim brake bikes, you
Yeah,
know,
I will say it's
because
good to see. These were the youngest fields. I said it about
yep,
Athens last week, but it was the same at Sunny King. Even in the 2-3 race,
yep,
it was overall a younger field than I've seen.
which is super good. Like
Yeah,
that's a good thing overall.
yeah, that's
Um,
awesome. I don't mean to be
I
down on the
yeah,
direction of the sport in general, but
yeah, but it's like one of those things where you're looking at like, and I've said this vocally, where $60 for a crit is kind of asinine.
yeah, yeah,
Like, sorry,
yeah.
I
I
know
mean,
like 30
you
to
and I
40
are in
bucks.
you and I are in that category. We're racing rim brake bikes. We're
Yep.
on mechanical group sets.
Yeah.
Money actually matters to us.
Right. I wouldn't be on Zips if I didn't find them in a shop basement. Like
Right.
that's where I'm at,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
think
We're
we're on the same level there. And I think it's just, you spending $60, you multiply that by sometimes 2 weekends a month times four, then you're looking at, almost $300-400 a month in
yeah.
race entries. It's not feasible for a lot of people.
And it starts to become a thing where you're like, all right, I'm picking and choosing now. And when there are
Yep.
so many of these big races, some of them are going to lose out. And unfortunately, this year, and I hope they saved a bunch of money by scooting things forward, not renting those lights. They
Yep.
did fill out the pro fields pretty well. Like, I hope they still did decent because I think people will continue to come to Sunny King. I don't think Sunny King is dying or anything. I think a lot of
No.
factors, there was the confluence of like collegiate nationals, peak crit, it's it's a lot of things came together to work against Sunny King this particular year. Bryce in the chat
Yep.
asked, is it just him or are all the races happening early? There's not really much in the southeast after armed forces. That is a good point. That's also generally like always true though. I find
Yeah,
there's always this like mid-season lull in the Southeast, and all I can figure out is that it's just hot, and promoters don't want to put on a race when it's like prohibitively hot, and they
I'm
think no
not
one's going to
racing in
show up.
July. Like,
I
you
will. I
know,
do. I do well in the heat. So if
I'm the
it's
opposite.
really hot
So
or really cold or raining, I do better because the
I
guys, the
bet.
super type A guys who like control every factor of their training, they just
Yeah,
fall apart. And I'm like a little bit worse than those guys.
I'm when it's raining, I do better, but if it's hot, I can't. So it's like in the southeast, we have this really big like February to May season, and then June, July kind of dip, and then August, September, October, you kind of get a little bit of road race bleed over, and then it's cyclocross. What you'll
Yep.
see, Bryce, is that yeah, the southeast is pretty much done by the middle of June, and then you start to see more of the northeast racing kick in, Midwest racing kick in, and then the West Coast is pretty much all year round, anyways. But
Yeah, I feel like
that's generally true.
there's a thing with tropical climates where they just race road bikes year round. Like I feel like
Yeah,
in California they're racing road bikes year round without regard for season. And
yeah.
in Florida they're racing road bikes year round without regard for season. Maybe it's just always so hot they don't care, but like Florida sometimes Florida state crit championship is like during cross season and stuff.
It's like December. Like
Yeah,
it
yeah.
makes no sense.
It gets a little wacky.
Yeah.
So, speaking of there being a ton of racing, there is racing starting tomorrow. Tomorrow, Joe Martin stage
Yep.
race starts, and we speaking
We
of
should have
amateur
been
racing,
there.
yeah, yeah. Speaking of amateur racing and like the way things are going, they cut their amateur race. We were gonna go because it is a stage race. In the past, they've had an amateur stage race that would have been worth it for us as a team to get out there. They cut it to like one crit, and then they added races, and I don't know what the status of the amateur race is, but we're not going.
They settled on a crit and a time trial, and that's it. If you're an
Ooh, no
amateur,
thanks. That
right?
that
Right. It
time trial
sucks.
on top of the crit is not sweetening the deal there. Especially the time trial for Joe Martin is just like straight up a mountain.
Right.
So that's like a total of, if it's a 50-minute crit and then that time trial takes, I don't know, 20 minutes, like we were going to go to Arkansas because there are two long road races, crit time trial. That's worth it. But
Yeah.
anyway, pros are still racing. They start tomorrow. They've got road race Thursday, road race Friday, time trial Saturday, infamous like uphill time trial, and I think the time trial averages 5% up a hill. It's like 3 miles.
That's the Devil's Den one. Yeah.
Yeah, and
That
then
sounds about right.
crit on Sunday. So they are advertising that their pro field is the biggest it has ever been at Joe Martin, which I kind of don't doubt because so many other pro level stage races have gotten cut, fallen away. So I think like the stage
Mhm.
race, the UCI level, um, it's condensing. While
Yeah.
crits are getting spread out, everybody's gonna want to go to the 3, 4 stage races that are
Yeah.
still on this level.
I think it's that, and I think we're starting to see a little bit more Canadian teams pop up, and they're all coming down.
Yeah,
Hugh Dog,
UNC.
Toronto Hustle, UNC. Like, there's a lot of Canadian teams coming down for it.
Yeah, my Zwift teammate Oliver is on UNC Lotto Max. He did Redlands with them. I don't think he's doing this one, but I did see they're registered. So looking through the list of who all they say is coming, I think on the women's side it would be impossible to overlook EF Education, Tibco, SVB. Which didn't
Yep.
SVB go under? Are they?
They got bailed out. You know how this
Oh,
you know how this
yeah.
goes.
Did they? Okay.
They got bailed out.
It's funny that they're still a sponsor, since they, failed recently.
Right,
Not a
right.
great look, but
Maybe the money had already been spent, and so
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, the kits are printed. You're not taking the logo off, so it is what it
right.
is. But another in the long line of hilarious cycling sponsorship calamities. But in this race, I think they're the odds-on favorite. They won last year on the women's side, and I don't see anybody who I think is going toe to toe with them. Maybe 2024, Virginia Blue Ridge. They're generally a good stage race team, really good time trial team, but
They're
it'll
just
be interesting. We've got
yeah.
Denver and Miami NCL
I think
teams.
I think Denver can step to them a little bit. Um,
I
I
haven't
think that
honestly looked at that Denver women's roster as much, but I feel like on the men's side, they're definitely a stage race team.
yeah. I mean, Leah Kirchman, who's like an Olympian's on that Denver team. So they're good. They've got some other women from the World Tour that came over. So like I think they are, one of those. Like, they're a team that can compete.
Yeah,
I don't know if Miami Knights is on that. Miami Knights women is quite on that level for stage racing,
right. They're
but I
more of a
think
crit team.
yeah. But I mean that race is really going to be between EF Education and I think Denver Disruptors can compete with them, but I think it's EF's to lose.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Virginia Blue Ridge is maybe not a dark horse, but like my third pick there. It's interesting that 3T QM. I didn't realize. I thought that was like a gravel team. Maybe they have a separate road team that is under that same umbrella or whatever.
I think it's all just one team, and I think they just do some gravel. I,
I'm mostly aware of them from gravel, but yeah.
yeah, I think they're branching more into road because 3T has a road bike they want to sell. So
Uh
I think they're branching more into road.
is it the one that Aqua? What was the team that Larry Warbass was on when he was the
Yeah,
year that he
it's
was national champion?
it's a better version of that.
They had that goofy one by bike, and then the team folded in the middle of the year, and they blamed the crazy 3T one by bike.
They blamed the bottom bracket flex throwing the chain off.
Yeah. Oh man, that was good. So on the men's side, um, it an interesting one. Canel's Zero Uno, the team that we know we've talked about on this show because Cormac McGeough is on it. Cormac is not going to be there. He is in
Okay.
Ireland racing with good guys.
Okay.
But above and beyond cancer is a team I've been aware of for a while. I raced with some of those guys on RGT and on Zwift a good bit during the pandemic, but they had a really good ride at some of the stage races earlier this season. So
They sure did.
they've punched above their weight this season. Interest. I think they're a good dark horse for this. They seem to be like really stage race focused this year. I'm excited to see Denver Disruptors. This is going to be a big showdown for them. They weren't at Speed Week, weren't at any of the other stuff, so we'll see kind of how they're going right now. Anybody on this team on this list jump out at you?
I'm trying to look. It's hard to read. It's
I can
like
zoom it for you a little bit if you
yeah, a
want.
little bit. Because I'm like looking at like the whole screen, and that's like a
Right.
little bit.
So
I will say, Hugh Dog Racing has been. They did like a team camp near us randomly, and they were all smoking Chiha. So I imagine they'll do pretty good at like the Devil's Den, TT, and some of the road races. I don't see them as a crit team, so I could be. I don't think they'll be competing for the GC super competitively, but they will be really good for those road races in TT.
so I think it's impossible to overlook Project Echelon
Oh,
as
for
like the
sure.
odds-on favorite here. After Gila, after winning the Redlands crit, after Sunny King, we just talked about, they're kind of on a hot streak. The other one I want to mention is Medellin.
I was gonna say that was gonna be the next one I threw out there. Superman Lopez is
Yeah, so
racing Joe Martin.
yeah, we speculated about this early, maybe even the first episode of this show that we might see Superman Lopez this year racing in America. We said crits because that team had done Speed Week in the past. They've changed it up a little bit, which makes sense having Superman Lopez. Although I guess if he makes it to the finish in this one, he didn't make it through stage two of the last one. But if he is there and makes it through this whole race, he will have to do a crit in America. So we
There
were
you go.
kind of right.
I'm gonna chalk that up as a win for us.
Yeah.
Like as
Yeah.
long as he's on the start line there, he raced a crit in America, and we were right.
Yeah, definitely.
There's
So,
another like the this is like a dark horse, not competitive team, but Team Novo Nordisk is
oh
on
yeah.
listed on here, which I didn't think they were still a team, so that's interesting. I mean,
Ye-
there's a few like that.
Yeah. Novo Nordisk is one of those teams that sometimes I'll think they're not a team anymore, and then they like show up to random stuff in the southeast. There was one year that I showed up to Auburn, the road race in Auburn, Alabama, and they Novo Nordisk brought a full squad, including a guy who had won a stage of the Giro 2 weeks or two, sorry, not 2 weeks, 2 years prior, and yeah, that happens. They're around and they pick up sneaky people like that sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, not I wouldn't even say a dark horse to be in there, but just a surprising like, oh yeah, they
That's
are.
yeah, like they're not going to be competitive, but just to like I was shocked to see that name because they
Yeah.
were a big team for so long and kind of just disappeared, but kind of were still around. It was just
Oh, the other one of
weird.
those I saw is Elevate. I did not know.
Yep.
So formerly Elevate KHS, the Williams brothers raced for them. A lot of people came through that squad. They were in the insane looking like black, the helmets that made them look like bad guys from Mario. They looked like Goombas in those like black
Right.
like bullet helmets.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess KHS is not a sponsor. KHS might not even be a brand anymore, but didn't know they were still a team. California based, I think. California or
That
Colorado, maybe both.
that sounds right, California. But I know they have some folks in Austin too. I think it's like a Southwest regional team.
Yeah, interesting to see who is on that and how they go at this. But yeah, kind of the last big stage race showdown of the year starts tomorrow. We will be following it for sure. We'll have that and a bunch of other stuff to talk about, I'm sure, by the time the next episode rolls around. Anything else you want to get to before we close it up?
I think that pretty much touches on everything. We'll talk about Joe Martin next week, and make sure you like, subscribe, follow, all of that good stuff because we're not good at
I'm
encouraging
gonna
that. So
remember to say
please,
that. Yeah. Okay, next episode I'm gonna say all that at the top. I always forget. You got to make it over an hour in to to get that stuff that I should be putting up at the top. But yeah,
right?
I will say follow my YouTube channel. I got a bunch of race footage that I'm breaking down. I've got a good one from a pre-Speed Week race where I think there were some good takeaways from that. I've got a local weeknight crit that I feel like I got a really good video from it, a really good tactical breakdown, really fun race with we were racing with William Seitz, who is going to be at Joe Martin.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the tie-in. That puts a bow on it. So on that note, I'm gonna
Beautiful.
say thanks everybody. Appreciate y'all hanging out.